Let's break the decks down, man. You want to do that? We got time tonight. Last night we didn't have time, but tonight we have time since we didn't go to game three. That was a really long game too. I think some of that was probably just the wonkiness of
Well,
Tabletop Simulator, but
I I didn't just like throw my man away into you like I did in game one.
yeah, that's true.
Uh,
That's true. I probably
but
made a mistake there not attacking with the Grave Knight when you had Scald on board, or yeah, it was. I think it was the Scald on board, and I marked him. I should have attacked Echo and forced the Scald to defend because your Guardian was exhausted, and I just you ended up um, taking my Grave Knight out there, but I also didn't care because it just gave me the triggers I needed to play a bunch of Fallen, which I thought would close the game out, and then they ended up closing the game out. So I was happy about that. I think Harold's really good.
he seemed good.
I think the ability to trade up into four defense men and then just the power of small sacrifice with marked
Like
like
imagine if you were actually playing River Scald like a sane person, how good the Herald ability would be.
I'm not gonna play River Skull in every deck, dude. I'm just not. I know you're infatuated with River Skull right now, but and I think River Skull's a very good card for sure.
Herald was also a consideration. It was like Odette and Herald were the other two I was considering as the
I think Odette's really good.
she's okay. Her kit is just expensive. That was what like uh pushed me away from her. Like I thought that I was gonna be out of dice most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was. That's why I like the Echo ability.
Right.
Because it's free.
Hold on. I'm gonna flip around to your side so that like the cards are right side up for your deck explanation. I think the deck you played was good.
It's fine. I specifically I think that uh I just think the Sacred Grounds didn't do what I wanted them to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like in most situations I should be good in combat. Because all my guys are like very good.
Mm-hmm.
But like your your gravity training did what I wanted the Sacred Ground to do for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it should probably be a gravity training. Though this deck does run out of dice. It
Well, I think
and
that's because you're playing so many colors, though, too, right? Like it limits.
I didn't ever have like my plays were never limited by the colors. I did have to meditate pretty aggressively, but I didn't lose to decking anyway, so
I,
I don't
I'm
think that that's
I meditate aggressively just for the get the allies in the bin to recur them,
yeah.
right?
I mean, the new ceremonial power is bonkers.
Yeah,
Holy crap!
it's really
Uh,
good. It makes up for sort of some of the ceremonial power cards that are just like do one to a Phoenixborn. Like that just we saw that last week where it didn't really get there, and I think the power card or the dice itself is to a point where and maybe somebody who's familiar with the game can chime in either here in chat or on our YouTube when this video goes up to YouTube. But I'd just be curious: can you play a ceremonial die if you have no ceremonial cards in your deck? Like,
I'm
could
sure
you?
you can.
Yeah, I mean, can you just run one ceremonial die for recursion and like?
The deck builder lets you put whatever random dice in your deck you want.
Yeah, but I mean, the deck builder
Uh,
doesn't just probably doesn't have logic built into it, right? So, I'm just curious, like whether that's a legal thing. I should just read the rule book on constructed, and I will check it out post stream. But if somebody knows for sure, I don't know if it's restricted, and if it's
that would
not,
be a strange restriction.
I don't disagree. But it also would prevent sort of this kind of thing. Not that it really matters. It's just something to
I
think
mean,
about.
like I was playing a single ceremonial dice, and most of the time I used it to get back my scald. But I had like I think if you're playing 40, it's easy enough for you to find a card that you would like sometimes play with the ceremonial dice to have in your deck that's
Hmm.
better than another card. Like
Have you noticed that like
because
every deck of Ashes though really plays more like a control deck? Like I don't think like I still haven't found like a what I would call a real aggro deck where you're not just like just pounding the Phoenixborn's face and just pressuring your opponent through aggro. I mean,
I mean that's just the nature of games that have persistent damage.
sure. I just was
Like
curious whether or not you thought had noticed that same sort of thing.
And also like because we both just start with 10 mana and there's no real curve of creatures, like you can't go under your opponent. Like that's like the how the aggro decks win traditionally in card games is like they're faster than
Right.
the other deck. But like just you can play your 1 drop on turn 1. I can play my 5 drop on turn 1.
Yeah.
So like the traditional like fast aggro deck like that doesn't work,
Right.
because
Well,
you can play your 2/1 or whatever, and I can play a 3/4, and then you're like, oh, well, I guess I don't get to attack anymore.
yep. All right, so let's
But
let's talk about your Echo deck. Let's
okay,
break it down, some of the decision points you
so
made, and then we'll break down my Herald deck.
the idea of the deck was what we were talking about before, is like how you beat River Scold. And I don't know if we were talking about this on stream or off stream, but like this is probably the best card in the game.
It's one of the best for sure.
Um, I mean, name one that's better, because I don't think that there is one. Anybody in chat can chime in too.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I think there's good
and
cards throughout the pool, but I think River Scald is definitely on the upper limit of power for what they want out of a card in a game.
so I don't see any reason not to play this card right now.
Mm-hmm.
Sympathy is good enough that you can build half a deck of Sympathy and have the River Scolds like easily playable once or twice a turn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that card's very good. The way that I think you fight it is by playing units that don't die to it in one. Last week I made the point that the Rymea unit is a good example of that, because even though it can take out the 2/1, it can take out one of the 2/1s, you're still left with a 1/2 and a 2/1. But just cards like I just played a bunch of 3/4s. Let me move these out of the way. So I pretty much think that Sonic Swordsman, Battle Seer, and Master Vampire are essentially the same card in this deck.
Yeah, I agree.
Like
They're
they all
very
have different
similar,
texts on them, but
but
they're all super similar.
they fill the same role. So you're just playing like what, 9 copies of this?
Yeah,
Three, 6, 9. Yeah. So cool.
and the I didn't want to go full in on the like, oh, I should play Fire Arch, not Fire Archer, whatever the illusion archer is that costs 4, just to superpower my Scald.
Oh, the Flash
But I
Archer.
wanted to have a number of 3 cost cards, so that I could do 3 with the Scald.
Sure. They also can be
Um,
recurred,
so
right? Like
having the 9,
you can ceremonial them back for 1 health. So you're guaranteeing 3 damage, not guaranteeing, but all but guaranteeing 3 damage on the Scald, and then paying 1 life to get it back in a die. It's not terrible.
right? I mean, the ceremonial die is just all these guys are just a splash, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so I have the illusion dice to pay for the Battle Seer. I have the ceremonial dice to pay for the Master Vampire, and I'm playing 2 of the divine dice because I have the Sacred Ground,
Mm-hmm.
which I think replacing Sacred Ground with Gravity Training and replacing one of the divine dice with another Sympathy dice is probably just better.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm playing the Charm dice because I'm playing Steadfast Guardian, which I think is like one of the biggest upgrades of the summon books in Reborn. This card is just obnoxious. The alert unit guard,
Right.
just so good. So again, I'm just splashing these dice. They pay for whatever. If I can't play something, I discard to River Squall. All the other cards in my deck, besides the initial cost of Sacred Ground, are playable off of basics or sympathy.
Okay.
So I'm playing 2 Crescendos. This is a card I'm not sure about, but
I think
like
Crescendo's
3
fine.
damage, and it doesn't take an action. So that's
I think
kind of
when
neat. I
I
didn't
think
draw
when you
them
have a
against
bunch of
you, but I
three,
think they would have been good.
I think when you have a bunch of 3/4s, this is the kind of card you want to be playing, right? Because It's essentially allowing your 3/4 to trade up if somebody plays a big unit like an Iron Rhino or like the Archosaurus mount, which has 5 defense. Like you just trade up, right? You can trade a Scald up, and you can deal damage to the unit, to a unit before damage is
Right.
dealt,
I mean,
right?
I think for the most part, my units won't have to quote unquote trade up because they're all very big to begin with.
Right.
But just like having a source of 3 damage seems pretty good. That's also I was playing Seeds of Aggression.
Yeah.
Again, I have a bunch of 3/4s.
I love
Seeds of
Seeds of
Aggression
Aggression so much,
is
dude.
good with 3/4s. And then I have some random stuff. I have a single copy of Revival Pact, which is a card that I think is really powerful. Um, it's a side action one
I think it's really good with
divine that
Xander, right?
shuffles 3 allies back.
I think it's really good with Xander.
Why is it good with it's anti-combo with Xander?
Doesn't
You want
Xander
your
allow?
guys in your discard.
I thought Xander searched the deck. Who searches the deck for the
No,
ally?
James does.
James. I'm sorry.
That's why there's a
That's
picture
why
of
it's a
James
picture
on
of
this
James on it.
card.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the wrong Phoenix
Um,
Burn. My bad.
it's just good. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you just
It also is a good
use
anti-mill card. Like if you're getting milled, you just put 3 cards back into the deck. It makes it harder for mill to get there. And we've not played a
yeah,
mill deck on stream yet, but I think mill is going to be
I'm
prominent.
not super sold on the rival pack, but I think that it's like a very powerful card.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm playing 2 copies of Safeguard
Safeguard was
because I
interesting when you played it, man. Just to be like really, really clear, like it definitely changed my play pattern when you played Safeguard.
right. I mean, it's good. It's super good to play on Steadfast Guardian. It's good, like, because I assume that it works this way. I don't actually know. But like, if your opponent passes, you can side action this on your Phoenixborn and then pass. And then if they have the first turn, they can't just like blast your Phoenixborn.
Correct. Yeah, because it's still the next turn.
Yeah. And it protects your men. I'm not sold on this card, but I thought that this deck was going to be very like combat oriented, just like creature to creature combat because of like my guys being 3/4s. They're sticky and I just got crushed by gravity training. I'm gonna take out the Call Upon the Realms. I thought that I would need this as like the fixing in the opening 5, but the Changing Winds was enough
Sure. I think I
by
think that
itself.
I think that I think gravity training is just going to be really good with all the 3/4s.
Right.
I mean, it just
Yeah, I
doesn't
would take
matter.
out uh the Call Upon the Realms and both Sacred Grounds, and I would put in 1 gravity training and some other stuff. I'm not sure what
Yeah,
the other stuff is, but that's what I would do. And I was playing Chaos Gravity, which I think is a really cool card now, the Echo loyalty card.
yeah,
Um, put an exhaustion on a unit, move a token from one unit to another unit controlled by the same player, and remove an exhaustion token from target unit. Um, again, because I thought that I was just gonna have like 2 3/4s in play most of the time.
right.
Um, just moving the exhaustion around, uh, it just seemed like a lot of tempo to play this card, but it
Hmm.
turned out to not be very good. Because, and I think specifically this card is not good against Herald because my 3/4s are supposed to like be a little sticky, but because of the Hunter's Mark, they weren't. They were just like 2 toughness guys.
Right.
So maybe this card's still good, but like I said, I was considering replacing Echo with Odette, in which case I would replace the Chaos Gravities with her loyalty card,
Hmm.
which is obviously powerful, or with Herald, and then I would replace the Chaos Gravities with Herald's loyalty card. But other than that, I think most of it is there, and the concept is still good.
Hmm.
But I found myself in a situation where like I didn't have trouble playing my cards, but I always ended up like all my dice exhausted and just waiting for you to complete your turn of like 4 dice and 1 card left. And I think that's a bad position to be in.
So, do you think that's a
Um,
product of too high of a dice cost in the deck? Like just the dice, like the cards you play costing too many die on an individual action. Like if you think of dice as actions and essentially how many turns you can go, the more you spend on
well,
dice.
right. And and that's part of it. And also, it's just that this deck doesn't have a lot of um, like it doesn't have a lot of books. It doesn't have a lot of ready spells. It doesn't have a lot of like Call of the Realms type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just committing stuff to the board, and you have to commit stuff to the board or the turn ends.
Right.
So that's like how you got me with Meteor so good, which Meteor's obviously an excellent card.
Yeah, I think it's
But
even
like
better
if
now than it was in 1.0, which is kind of hard to.
I don't agree with that because it doesn't exhaust all the units anymore.
Well,
But the
sure,
damage
okay.
is better.
Yeah, the damage output
It
is
used to
better.
also exhaust all the units, so it's
I
pretty
mean,
bonkers.
Herald with Meteor is kind of insane, right? Because in theory, you can put up to 3 damage triggers on that, which means that Meteor with Herald marking something is up to 6. I mean, that means Herald can literally kill anything with a Meteor, and probably still wipe the whole board in many cases. So it's
Yeah,
just
I
kind of
mean,
nuts.
you 2-for-1 me with it in both games,
Yeah.
or maybe twice in game two. I don't remember if you played in game one, but
Well, I did
um,
play it in
like
game
Meteor is obviously extremely
2.
powerful.
Yeah, I don't think I played it in game 1. I'd have to go back. I don't remember.
And what's
Those two
funny
games
is that
blurred.
in game two, when you played the second time, I had considered like side actioning Sacred Ground.
Yeah,
Um, and I decided not to do it because I thought that I was going to lose my guy anyway. But if I had done it, it would have saved both my guys.
correct. Well, I just wouldn't have played it at that point. But yeah,
Right. Uh,
yeah, I telegraphed it too. I had to telegraph it that round because I had to meditate. But yeah, I mean,
it is interesting. Like I said, I because this deck is mostly like dudes and they're like high investment dudes, you in put a lot of your eggs in the basket early in the turn.
hmm
And I think that's a disadvantage of a deck like this.
hmm
Um,
yeah. I mean, I feel like I feel I'll add to that when I talk about my deck because my deck is kind of weird in its opening. It sort of has like an engine that has to be built and then it works. So cool. I mean, anything else you want to comment on this deck before we move on?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, just like trade your guys efficiently,
Right.
which you
I
should be able to do at 3/4s.
I agree. I think there's a lot of decks that would have a problem with this deck overall, especially with Guardian around just to protect them on top of that, like as an extra layer.